leadership I use in the class is the ability to get other people to do what you want them to do as if it's their own idea with interest and desire of their own, right? If I did something well, they would say, "Oh, you did a great job on that. Now we're going to give it to a business person because a lawyer shouldn't have it now that it's doing well." And if I didn't do well, both of those things happened. They would say, "Ah, this is what happens when you let a lawyer do it."
Welcome back to CZ and Friends, where we talk with legal leaders, technologists, and operators driving innovation in their companies and beyond. Today's guest is Doug Leeds, whose career spans CEO roles at Ask.com, IAC Publishing, and Eat Club, and now Doug is teaching leadership at my alma mater, UC Berkeley. Doug has scaled global consumer internet brands, driven transformative acquisitions, and navigated the pressures of being a public-facing CEO. In this episode, we'll explore what it takes to lead through change, the lessons Doug draws from multiple tech booms, including early internet where he and I worked together, and how he's shaping the next generation of leaders to think critically about persuasion, creativity, and AI. And he started as a lawyer. So fun fact, Doug and I met back in 2003 when I was a paralegal at Yahoo. Yahoo had acquired a company where Doug was in-house counsel, now called Overture, at the time GoTo.com, the company that invented sponsored search, now a basically trillion-dollar market. Let's dive in. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so nice to catch up with you.
Excited to do it. Doug, you began your career in law and policy before moving on to operating roles at Yahoo, and then later becoming a CEO. So what did you like about being a lawyer, and then what eventually drew you to the business side?
The intellectual challenges of the law profession, especially in-house, I thought were just wonderful. Like still is like a hobby to me. And we'll talk a little bit later about what I'm doing now. It kind of blends back into some of the law stuff because I just find the issues really interesting and I always have. So I still like go on a holiday every year with my law school friends and we talk about legal issues because I enjoy it. So for me, it was wonderful, but it turned out to be a better hobby than a profession.
Interesting. So when like tell us about that shift, right? Where you just like you did more of like commercial roles where you got more of like a BD sense, or like a lot of our listeners are, currently in-house counsel and perhaps aspiring to a journey that you took. So like stepping into that moment, what kinds of things did you do? And how did you realize the law was a better hobby?
Well, so actually, before we met, which was in the legal department at Yahoo, I had left law, failed attempt to leave law, actually. So I was 2 years at a law firm and got out because I knew I didn't like law firm life. They made it easy for me because they told me I could either choose the firm or my family. They said that specifically to me, choose your firm or the family. So that was a huge gift. I'm like, great, I'm going to choose the family. And went into a policy role at a company that got acquired. And they gave me a bunch of money to leave, like literally 5 times my annual salary to go away. So
Wow.
it was across the board. It was fantastic. Stroke of luck. So I'm like, great, I'll start a company. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to build something. I wanted to create something. That was what really was my passion. And then got into the dot-com era where it was going great and then busted. And the question about what do you want to do, firm or family, came up again when my wife's like, that law degree, you might want to start using that again now that you don't have anything else going on and you have 3 daughters at home. And so I went back. But luckily, the law in-house job I took at Overture at GoTo was full of people who didn't want to be lawyers also. It was a really great, and most of them ended up not being lawyers eventually. So it was and it was a startup. So we all got to do lots of different things. And so I kept doing stuff that wasn't legal, even in the legal position. And when we got bought by Yahoo, that stopped in large measure. Yahoo was a much bigger company, a much bigger law department, a much more defined role. And it was like, no, you're in legal. And I kept trying to do things that were on the edge of it, pushing into doing products and building stuff. And I got caught in this scenario where if I did something well, they would say, oh, you did a great job on that. Now we're going to give it to a business person because a lawyer shouldn't have it now that it's doing well. And if I didn't do well, both of those things happened. They would say, ah, this is what happens when you let a lawyer do it.
That's
So
amazing.
it was a catch-22 that ultimately I had to find something else.
Love that. I think these themes of like, I've definitely had this in my career where it's like, you kind of like just do things because you're almost like compelled and the structure is like not quite there. So interesting. So you went on to lead Eat Club and you scaled it to basically leading in corporate food delivery, and then you got it acquired by Compass. Before that, you founded and ran IAC Publishing, which was one of the biggest digital publishers at the time. So these kind of chapter moments, like you've painted a picture of sort of like, the personal and the preferences kind of nudging you in a certain way. But what's the through line among the different chapters that, leading you to today?
I think the through line is curiosity and being interested in new things and learning. I'm teaching now at Haas. They have these things called defining leadership principles, and one of them is students always. Another is question the status quo. I love both of those. I think that's what's been interesting to me, even in the legal side, which is what can we do differently? How can we look at this that hasn't been looked at before? And so for my career, it's been a progression of doing things that I haven't done before because they really motivate me. Yeah.
Spot the opportunities then. So obviously early internet was a big one, e-commerce, advertising. Do you have like a do you do like a pros cons, or do you like, you see
Sure.
what you're reading? Like what do you like, because I'm thinking like for me it's something that I sort of do naturally, and people ask me that, and I'm not quite, I never have a satisfactory answer. So what how do you spot opportunities, especially in industries?
Yeah, I think having a good group of people that you trust, that trust you, that there's like good psychological safety, and so that they bring up problems that need to be solved. That's the key thing, is understanding where a problem needs to be solved. Because then you can start collaborating and figuring out how you might solve it. Now that might be internally. The IAC publishing came out of problems we were having at Ask. So we created that because we were solving problems, but we wouldn't have solved those problems if we didn't have sort of that culture of we can tell you when something is wrong or where something isn't going right. And I don't, as a leader there, it's very important not to take that out on them personally. What do you mean this is not going well? No, it's actually tell me more. This is exciting. How can we fix it? How can we change? That shows you a path to opportunities. I hadn't really done it as a startup. I'm about to do it or about to launch before. It's usually going into a bigger company, getting to know the people there and understanding the problems they're having, and then looking for opportunities maybe to pivot within a company. That's been sort of how I've done things in the past.
So ask.com, besides the amazing URL, tell us what the business is. And then the way I see it now, ChatGPT and AI are sort of like that ultimate promise of an ask.com.
Yeah.
So did you have that vision at the time? And what was the business? So orient us a little bit to what was the business. And then, ultimately, at the time, obviously, generative AI didn't exist. Did you hit that wall as a business? Give us a little bit of a picture.
Yeah, sure. So I had left before AI was really a factor. We had other things. I came in after we stopped working together, which is, I think, 2006. I find it so interesting that we were working together in 2006, and I said, I want to leave the law, and you said, I want to go to law school. Like, it was such
Exactly.
a different
No, it's
experience.
amazing. And then we had folks like Michelle Cunanan at the time. She went to Meta, and she was like employee 300 of Meta. And, for a while I had this kind of Silicon Valley sort of like, oh man, I should have done that. But obviously connecting the dots, just as you said, I'm just so happy. Like, and it's so fun to talk with you. I'm literally like, how did you get there? So yeah, tell me about Ask.
Yeah, so I came to Ask. It had just changed its name from Ask Jeeves, which was sort of the famous, original search engine. We had just been purchased by IAC, which is a big public holding company. Had many, many companies, many famous companies there, and they had taken Ask Jeeves private, and it was a public company, to sort of serve as the foundational interconnection between all these other brands that they had. They're like, oh, everyone gets traffic through search. What if we owned a search engine? So I came in to run product originally there, and the problem we were having was that Google was kicking our butt. I mean, it wasn't even a product issue. It was more of a brand issue. Like, we would innovate, we'd create new things, we'd release them, and then within a week, Google would copy them. And within 2 weeks, the world would say, I like Google because they have that thing that we created. um, and it was pretty frustrating from a product perspective at Ask, creating these things, feeling really good about what we're doing, seeing them instantly copied, and then getting no credit for them. What that meant was we had a brand issue. Um, or put another way, Google had no brand issue. Like, Google, I used to be asked this question. It would drive me nuts. How do you feel about competing with a company whose name has become a verb? Like, you Google it. And I'm like, ask was a verb first. Like, You can ask something before you can Google something, but it didn't matter. Google had taken over and had 90% market share. And so it was a challenge to figure out what to do about that. But that's one of those moments we were talking about. Like, how do you what do you do with that? And first thing I did was I started acquiring other companies and giving us some diverse business. I bought dictionary.com first, and
Another
then
great URL.
yeah, another great URL. And that formed the strategy ultimately for ISC Publishing. But at the time, it was a great acquisition. I went to run it. That was fantastic because the CEO of Ask, I was running product, said, he actually came to me and said, do you want to run biz dev for us? And I said, absolutely not. I feel like I've been in the witness protection program for my legal career for like 2 years now. And no one knows here that I'm a lawyer. And the last thing I want to do is like a lawyer by another name, which is business development. And he's like, well, how about this? Buy us a company and then you can be the CEO. Okay.
That
So
gave me
that
the
was how I
chills,
got it.
that's
Yeah.
lovely. I mean, it's also one of these things of it's like, how did you get to that point? Like, have you just done great work for him? Or like, what was that's an incredible story.
Yeah, I had done good work, but that wasn't, I think, it. I think it was that he actually was a CEO. He was brand new and he didn't believe in product, and I was running product. I have a lot of disagreements with this person, but he didn't believe that product was right. He thought we had a marketing problem. I think that makes sense. So he wanted to pull, he said, look, everything you do, it's great. I can see it at Google, but it's not where we should be investing because they're getting all the credit for it. So we should put our money into marketing. And that means you don't have a job, but we want you here. So go buy something. That was sort of the story.
It's
Yeah.
fascinating. So in that difference with Google, so I can 100%, empathize with this sort of like underdog type of scenario. And I think, I was involved at Amazon when Amazon tried to do a phone and it was sort of too late.
Yeah.
But that innovation was a great spirit, but in the case of Amazon, it was too late and they had this fundamental technology right around the iPhone and other things. Was it just that fundamental search algorithm? Like, and you and I can nerd out about search algorithms like crazy. I
For
remember at the
sure.
time we had kind of Chilu and these like sort of early
Yeah.
people. Like algorithmic search was actually basically the AI of the era. But was that with Google? You said, okay, you got the CEO saying, don't do product stuff. Let's just focus on marketing. Was the technology difference kind of unovercomable, or like what?
Yeah.
Like, tell us about that piece.
That's exactly true. It was unovercomable. Unlike your experience, we started before Google did, so we were around first, but they got big really fast and really was a better product. The search product was better, and they got bigger, and they were investing billions where we were investing hundreds of millions, and it's not that different from AI in the sense that it really was a capital intensive business, and we didn't have the capital. Even though we had a lot of capital, we didn't have the capital to compete with Google. Um, we had tried, we had bought a company that called Teoma at the time that was doing its own search, and we thought that would be an improvement, but we just didn't have the firepower to compete with them. So ultimately, we joined them. I mean, when I took over as CEO, we were still trying to do this marketing thing, and we had spent $100 million literally on marketing, and we really hadn't moved the needle at all. And we weren't going to. So I pivoted the business, and basically did a deal with Google and said, okay, we'll use your technology.
Wow.
And
And
so
similar to what
I
I guess Apple does today, right? Like Apple still has Google powering search
Yeah,
on
although we were
phones.
a search engine, what Google has, I mean, Apple has a lot of things they do. They don't need to be a search engine too. We were a search engine using someone else's search engine. And it was a legal reason why that worked. Because Google, it's so funny how it all comes around again. Google needed another search player, pure search player, to show to the antitrust officials that they weren't a monopoly. So they had to show that there was another competitor out there that was doing well. And we were the perfect model for that because we didn't do anything other than search. So they really propped us up in a lot of ways.
So that is
Um,
fascinating for our listeners. So basically, this idea that Google, and they're seeing it today still,
yes.
that Google has these antitrust problems and so is willing to go out and do business deals to actually prop up others. That is fascinating. And
Yeah. I
so,
mean,
how do you, I mean, so you kind of were like, all right, it's cool. We have however many million users a month. Let's go. Or like, how do you rally the team around something like that?
gosh, it was great. That was easy because we became like we had to scale down. Unfortunately, we had to, lay off the people in our tech who were doing the tech. But we built a basically an arbitrage business, to be honest. I hated that word, but it was an arbitrage business. We would buy ads on Google and direct them to our search and then sell those customers the same ads that they would get on Google. It was really just buying over here and selling over there and moving the traffic. And we became incredibly good at that. Like we were spending $1 billion a year on Google ads.
$1 billion a
It
year.
came
That's
to, I think,
amazing.
1 in every 10 or 12 searches worldwide on Google had an ask ad on it. Um,
That's incredible. The scale of this. Like, see, this is the thing, it's like these Silicon Valley themes. So that's actually a good segue, is like you've been across multiple eras of technology, the dot-com boom, the rise of mobile, now AI. Google started at the time. Obviously, you're deeply familiar with them, having been, apparently the world's largest consumer, or at least the
yeah,
world's largest
yeah,
buyer of Google's ads.
that's right.
What are the patterns that you see repeat across cycles? So, like, are there moments now, maybe the Google antitrust or others, where you're like, "This is déjà vu. I've seen this movie before."
Yeah, I think in some ways the the question that I get a lot, and everyone does, is should we be excited or scared about AI? And that just feels to me like the same question. Should we be excited or scared about the internet? It just feels exactly the same. And then there's a big investment rush, and then there's probably a bubble that bursts, and then there's a few winners, and then people build an ecosystem around that, and then people learn how to run businesses, but also more value. Like if you look at the world today versus the world before the internet, everyone would say there's more value. Doesn't mean there wasn't a lot of disruption. Doesn't mean that jobs didn't change. I feel like that's the same. I know that there's going to be disruption like crazy, and there already has been. But I'm hopeful that we'll see that innovation wave result in a greater opportunity set for people who are interested in this. And I think that's very parallel to what we saw in Web 1.0.
A lot of folks are asking if this AI surge, how it's gonna last. And, I see the parallel with internet very clearly. And obviously, Yahoo is still around today, Google's still around today, Webvan is not, but Instacart is. Is AI different? And I guess I'm just remembering you and I were at Yahoo, Dan Rosenzweig, who I think is also now a CEO in the space still, but he used to send the BlackBerry files. So he would send, like, I don't know, once a week or something, he would send an email to the whole company that he had typed on his BlackBerry. And that was like novel at the time. So it's like funny now. And I remember at the time, I was a paralegal, so I didn't qualify to get a BlackBerry. It was like you had to be a director. And I was like, one day I will
Yeah.
achieve this. But I guess, related to that story, like, is AI different? And maybe are you building something with AI? How do your students think about it? Like, is it going to be in 2 years? We're going to see the disruption that we saw in 10 in the internet. Any wisdom to share there?
I mean, I think all those things, yes, across the board, yes to all those things. I think we will see the disruption faster. Yes, I am building something. And I'll tell you about that in a second because I'm excited to tell you about it. And yes, my students are, as a teacher, that's probably where the biggest disruption I think I'm seeing personally is right now because we're struggling with how do you teach with this tool that basically creates the output that we thought our students were creating? How do we engage their intellect when it's not through necessarily writing an essay, which they can have done for them instantly? So there's disruption everywhere. I'm seeing a lot of it in education. And, it's like anything. I'm sure when the calculator was invented, there was a bunch of disruption. Like, how do we teach math now that there's a calculator? And you adjust and you get calculator can take care of certain tasks, use it as a tool, and then keep going. I think that's where AI will be in all things. Now, in a company, there's other issues. There's governance issues, there's data privacy issues, there's a whole bunch of things that have yet to be solved. And when you have a company and you have customers' data, you have employees that are using AI with that customer data, even if it's not an officially sanctioned thing, like, oh, we have a tool for everyone to use. It's like my students, they're all using it because it helps them tremendously, but it opens up liability risks and holes in all the plans that you've made have now a big gaping hole in them from AI. And look, you're the expert on this, not me.
Yeah, no, I mean, I see
So
it. I think
yeah,
it's a challenge. I mean, the student thing is a great example because, they There's a book that says that like every human endeavor is basically sales, and including teaching. And I think with teaching, it's like, okay, what you're selling is knowledge, the ability to learn, et cetera. And it's like, okay, they can get it now through AI. They can get the writing stuff. How do you engage them? And so, yeah, no, I see that. I guess I wonder if there's anything. So we do see lots and lots of teams and kind of change management. And I think the teaching is actually a good mechanic. And that's been what we focused on in GCAI around getting teams to adopt. But I guess question for you is like, you've done a whole lot of M&A, a whole lot of cultural transformation. Any kind of like, I mean, I don't want to say pithy tips, but any kind of like quick hits that you would advice that you would give to say GCs or CEOs who are trying to AIify their orgs?
Well, I think it's the tips I would give are more generic and general than specifically for AI, but I think it applies to this, which is build psychological safety. Like you've got to really focus on a way to build a culture where people can feel comfortable sharing what's going on in their world. Because without that, you will have big problems. You'll have risk with people using AI in ways they shouldn't, but doing a bunch of things, not understanding the challenges that you have at your business. And I think as leaders, I've taken the approach in my career to use silliness specifically for this and to like embrace being silly. I put my entire company,
Paint a picture.
yeah,
Paint a picture.
I
Like,
put my
give us
entire
some stories.
company, at Ask/IC Publishing as we were transitioning through improv training, 2,000 people. Uh,
So good. 2,000 people.
yeah. And my senior execs hated it at first. And then within a couple of weeks, they were like, oh my gosh, not only was I wrong about this impact at work, I'm using it at home and it's changed my family life. And there's
Gave
that,
me the chills, Doug. That's
oh, really?
amazing.
Oh,
That's lovely. No, I mean,
thank
I
you.
because I do think the like yes and thing is important, but the
Yes.
level of commitment for 2,000 people to go through basically acting classes, like this is epic, like so good. And so, there's somebody, let's say you had some executives, they're like, no, I'm not into it. And then they're like, I'm talking to my kids better. It's amazing.
My spouse? Yeah, exactly. And just be clear, it wasn't acting. It was yes and for sure, but not performance based. It was about taking someone's idea and building on it and listening and empathetic listening and active listening and all those kind of skills and silliness and being able to fail in front of other people in a risk free way allowed you to build trust so that you could talk about other things. And that,
So good.
yeah, it was good. It was really fun. It's what got
And
me into
so
teaching, by the way. I
oh, that's what
wanted
I
to
was gonna
teach
say.
it.
Yes. So that's actually
Yeah,
the next thing. So today you're teaching leadership and persuasion at UC Berkeley Haas. First of all, do you teach silliness?
I do. So I have 2 classes. One's called Leadership by Persuasion. The other one's called Creativity and Leadership. Creativity and Leadership is full on embracing silliness. Like, absolutely. Played a game of yesterday was class. We played a game of like musical chairs, but changed so there'll be some leadership lessons in there. But the whole course is structured around learning through playing games. That's the whole course.
So how I guess what are the students like what's your ideal outcome when a student takes your class? And by the end they've played the games, etc. So they're going to go into their job. Maybe it's similar to, the IAC of however many years ago where you're sort of doing this very technical SEO, advise, very math based, dashboards, all these things. When they leave your class, how are they like literally be very concrete, like how are they going to be better in their jobs, or what ideally happens?
So the definition of leadership I use in the class is the ability to get other people to do what you want them to do as if it's their own idea with interest and desire of their own, right? So how do you motivate people? How do you persuade people? How do you lead people into doing what you want so that it's their interest in doing it and they want to do it? Go through a series of games. We also do a social action project where the students go out into the community and try to make some change happen and then learn from those experiences to get to a sense of, okay, how do I put all these pieces together? How do I listen to somebody? How do I make them feel heard? How do I understand why the thing I want them to do isn't already happening? That's a big part of it. Why I coined a term for it called WAPADI, which I teach, which is why aren't people already doing it? It's an acronym, WAPADI.
I love that. You know what's so funny is as a leader now for me coming into being a CEO, that question of like, I thought this was happening. Like, what is going on? Like, this just sort of like, why aren't people already doing it? Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So I'm going to be an evangelist for your term. So okay,
thank
so you
you.
teach them that, and then
Yeah.
they get to this leadership of like getting people to do things. This was our idea. That's bringing to mind for me. So a lot of our listeners, are focused on the legal field. Maybe they manage compliance, security, HR, these kinds of functions. And I used to train when I trained more junior compliance folks. It was like, again, compliance is sales because you're getting people to do things maybe they don't really want to do, right? And maybe the law in some cases may not make a ton of sense. So you've got this like parallel thing where you're trying to persuade regulators or make some change there while simultaneously being like, yep, I know this seems a little strange. We got to do it. Like, here's how we're going to motivate. And so, how did you apply it in these sort of more, I guess, more or more like in that context? Like, how would you make it specific to legal?
Well, I mean, I think this is where it came from in some ways. Like, as a lawyer, especially an in-house lawyer, which I know more about. So I shouldn't say especially, I just know more about that. As an in-house lawyer, you have a lot of authority with respect to like what the legal rules are and what the requirements are, but not a lot of authority to make somebody do something. Right. That comes maybe up through the GC if you're the GC, then up to the CEO and back down. But you're not going to go into a meeting if you're like a mid-level lawyer and say, you have to do this and expect people are going to do it if they don't want to do it. It's going to get escalated. There's going to be a fight, all that kind of stuff. So the enjoyment that I had out of being a lawyer was working with teams to figure out a way to get them to do what I needed them to do as if it was their idea. How do we
That's
find a
great.
way to say
Oh,
yes instead of saying no? And one of the big problems with lawyers is they're looked at the place as that's where you go to get a no instead of, okay, this is how you solve a problem. We do have a problem here, but there's a way to get to yes. Not trying to steal the name of that book, but there's a way to get to yes.
yeah. That's right. And I mean, we talk about this a lot with other guests of like this, there's some people are like, there was a meme that did very well, and I'll tag him in the show notes that was like, change legal from the Department of No to the Department of I told you so. And it's like, oh God, no, don't do that.
No.
But it was kind of like, it was like this Department of No, like KNOW is another one that, my friend out of Canada uses. But this idea of that, we're not trying, like, I don't get this satisfaction out of like, no, 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 the statute says this. It's more like, how do you make it a we thing? We're like, okay, we're going to launch Alexa. Like the example I always use is Alexa, where I was product counsel on there. And you tell, most privacy attorneys at the time, like, hey, we're going to launch, effectively a hot mic in your house. And they'd be like, what? It would just not be a thing that they would be on board for. But, I had another guest, Tina Patel, who she and I worked on that project together. And it was like, you know what? No, we looked at all 50 states worth of wiretap laws. We made these beautiful charts and things. And then ultimately, what was really beautiful was the product teams did exactly what you described, because it was like, okay, there was a realization that this new technology, people need to be comfortable with it. They did the ring light. They did where you could delete your utterances. You could, have a lot of control. And it ultimately was that customer friendly thing. So for me, like actually practicing in privacy was one of my favorite areas to practice, because it did have that kind of like reasonable person, very almost like user experience type bent to it,
Yeah.
which is I guess what you're describing too, of like, okay, what is the business angle that we can reach? Or in this case, your antitrust thing, like that's amazing. Like you can imagine at Google, somebody being like, okay, how can we like fix our position here? Well, let's do some interesting BD with
Yeah.
IAC. So you can see the
Exactly.
other
I
side
think
of the
we
table there
actually
too.
pitched them on that. But the ring light, I love this because that is an example of I don't know who came up with the ring light idea and where it was, but it solves a big problem, right? Which is the idea that something is there, that the mic is being used in some way, right? And so interesting, like just in conversations with you right now, thinking really what I think lawyers could do more of is be legal product managers
Yes.
and really thinking about, okay, instead of saying no, what is the use case? And then how do I build a product into the product we already have that accomplishes the legal, risk avoidance, but also the job of what the product is there to do. And we call that a lawyer, but it's really a product manager if you think about it like as solving the problem instead of just identifying it and saying no.
Yes, 1000%. I mean, for me, I self-identified in that, and it's been a big kind of boon to my career. We have a lot of folks, who have this product counsel title. And I think, we had an episode a few weeks ago with David from Sneak, and I relayed the story that I supported the product team at Amazon, and then they had an offsite where they did, what is it, like the fake skydiving where you're like on top of a fan or whatever. And I got invited with the product management team. And it was like one of these, I remember it my whole career. It's like this pinnacle moment. So, Charlie Kindle, if you're listening, thank you for the invite because I still remember 15 years ago or however many years ago doing that. So legal product manager. I mean, this is interesting because we are seeing now, particularly with AI, that legal is in a great position to actually drive AI because of some of the data issues, privacy, confidentiality, all these things. So I think I'm gonna have a challenge. So if you're listening and you have the title legal product manager, reach out and we will have you on the show and we will hat tip Doug for coming up with it. I love it.
I
Awesome.
love it.
You're founding a nonprofit.
Yeah,
Or co-founding a nonprofit. So what is it? Tell us about the vision. And
sure.
how does it relate to what we've talked about today?
So it's called RSL, which stands for Really Simple Licensing. And it is two things. It is an open web standard that anyone can use to articulate their rights for the content that they're publishing or creating with respect to AI. So coming from search, we use the robot.txt file as a way to describe in machine readable terms what search engines could do with the content that we published. And that created an ecosystem, which is, okay, you could take my content, you can crawl it as long as you index it and then give me traffic. That's the ecosystem. You can have the content to index it and you send me traffic, which I monetize. But that is blown up by AI because they take the content and they don't give the traffic back because they're giving you an answer without a link or a link you would need to use because the answer is all right there. So they're doing this. Obviously, this is well known at huge, scale, internet scale, millions of sites. They're taking the content. The web standard would allow anyone to say, here's what in the robots.txt or attached to any piece of content or into your HTTP, this is what the rules are for using my content. On top of that, we're building a collective rights organization. So think of like ASCAP for music, but this is for all the content on the internet, basically to come together and collectively represent those rights with the AI companies. So you can all say, oh, you can get all the content across the entire internet in one contract. So it's super efficient. It creates a new product that didn't exist before that helps both AI companies and content creators and publishers get paid for their work. So that's what we're launching. By the time this podcast is out, it'll have launched with support
Amazing.
from Reddit and Yahoo and People Inc. and Internet Brands and Ziff Davis and Medium
That's
and like
amazing. Well,
lots of companies.
I can't think of a better person to do it. Because if you're thinking, that you at IAC, you were buying 1 in 12 ads on Google. Like the thing that I think people don't realize is like the scale of the really micro payments that happen on Google. Like, so I remember when I was at Yahoo and we had, I think, a patent case or something. And the question was, what is the scale? And basically figured out if you consider every single click, so every time you click on a sponsored link, that is a few cents or up to hundreds of dollars that are getting charged and tracked. And, Google's massive ad systems and build and so on, the number of transactions is actually greater by, I think, an order of magnitude of what Visa and MasterCard process
Well,
every day.
yeah, for
So
sure.
thinking about the scale of this and for AI, like this is actually a reaction that I had. So I did some speaking on the New York Times versus OpenAI case. And then this week I spoke with the press about the Anthropic settlement. And basically my conclusion was your company. Was this idea that there is a commercial solution here. And funny you mentioned ASCAP because it's very sophisticated and there's a very clear music licensing framework, very simple. So I think doing it for the internet, if you think about authors and the ability to publish, including on IAC or anywhere, like I always tell people ask me like, how is AI trained? And I'm like, well, have you ever posted something at Craigslist? Have you ever made a comment on Meta? Congratulations, you've trained an AI.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And let's take Reddit, for example, because they're a sponsor, like 40% I've seen of AI training is happening on Reddit. Reddit has
Wow.
deals with some, but not, for example, Anthropic, who they're suing right now, who's just taking their content. And that's just, it's two things. One, it's probably illegal and we'll have the lawsuits to settle that. But two, it doesn't allow for that content to be created, to be rewarded. So the ecosystem breaks. And ultimately, that hurts the AI companies too, because they need this content to continue to be created. So actually, like Sam Altman has said, we need a system, we need a protocol that allows for this to work. Great. That's what we're
Getting
doing.
people, I love this. I think this is an example of you're getting people to think stuff is their idea. But no, this is so good because I think like OpenAI has done a good job of this. in terms on the public policy side of like, hey, regulate us. Like we want to be regulated. And this
Yeah.
is fascinating. I'm going to talk with someone from Cruise on the autonomous vehicle side where we're similar, where it's like, hey, no, we actually do want rules in this scenario. I love it. I can't wait to use this and to like, to go through the legal terms, which are going to be amazing, and see the systems. I mean, I'm right, legal nerd, which is like a lot of our listeners. So, all right, so let's go to quick take. So, what is a book, podcast, or idea that has influenced your thinking?
So this is an idea. There's something called the three H's. I don't know if you've heard of it, but the three H's are when someone's talking to you, they're talking to you for one of three reasons, or maybe more than one, but one primary reason. It's either to be heard, to be helped, or to be hugged. And if you get that wrong, you're really missing the the interaction and the value in the interaction. And I get that wrong all the time. So like I hear everything as I'm asking for help. And so like someone talks to me and I immediately go into, okay, let's break down. How do we fix the problem? How do we solve it? When oftentimes they just really just want to be heard. They just want to be acknowledged for what they're saying, for their ideas, for their pain, for their stress. Or sometimes they just want some sympathy, some hugging. And while this works absolutely in the family dynamic, it absolutely works also in work. Your employees, your colleagues, there are times when they're not asking you for your help. They just want to be acknowledged and heard. And I don't know, that's something that's been really helpful for me to think through. Uh, yeah, about how
Love
to,
that. Yeah, I love
yeah,
that. It actually funny. So I Google it for my own to bookmark something later, and it says apply the three H's and unboss a little, which I think
unboss.
that's
Yeah,
probably helpful. This like
exactly.
boss, because then I think there's like this boss lady thing that at least that I'm trying to figure out my own leadership style as a CEO, and it's very helpful. Amazing. Let's see. So. Any other advice for somebody? So let's rewind the clock. We're let's see, late 90s, I guess, and you're starting your career. What advice would you give yourself?
Okay, so I think my career was definitely accelerated from taking the advice of Alexander Hamilton and from the musical, be in the room where it happens. That's my advice. It got so much exposure to some of the business issues that were happening, for example, at Overture, at goto.com, and was able to start building stuff there because none of the lawyers knew how to use PowerPoint. So
Love
I,
that. I
yeah,
love that. So good. Funny enough, I had a English teacher, Mr. Seitz, rest in peace, who had us do our final project in PowerPoint, which at the time was new. So I don't remember much about Chaucer, but I was like, when I got to Yahoo, I was like weirdly good at PowerPoint. And it was like a crazy career accelerant. And that was
wasn't
like the
it?
new
I
thing of
mean,
the day. So it really was.
yeah,
And so I think I would tell people like learn AI. Like we actually hired junior people. I've got an associate chief of staff. We've got a AI ops engineer, and they are fresh grads who were really into AI. And so, yeah, love like pick that moment. This has been fantastic, Doug. Where can folks
thank you,
listen,
Joy.
or listeners connect with you, find out about RSL, find out about your
Yeah.
class?
So rslcollective.org is the website that we have for the collective. And I encourage everyone to go check it out, especially if they're creators or publishers, because we'd love to have you join us. It's free to join and we'll give you money. That's the pitch.
Amazing.
And yeah, and my class, if you want one of two things, if you're a student at Berkeley, it's an undergraduate class, check out Creativity and Leadership or Leadership by Persuasion. And if you want to maybe speak at Leadership by Persuasion, hit me up at, my
So good. No,
LinkedIn.
we have, I mean, I'm thinking of like Ruby Zepho at Uber also uses kind of humor and kind of lightheartedness to be incredibly effective. Other folks I'm thinking, I mean, I think like I love to come to your class. Like I love this stuff.
I would
So
love to
yeah,
have you.
reach out to Doug.
We're
Let's
going to have
go.
you come next
Amazing.
semester, come
So
speak.
good.
That would be great.
Super fun. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful to catch up and to talk with you. Congrats on
Hey,
all your
likewise.
success.
Thanks again. That was my conversation with Doug Leeds. His journey shows how leaders can evolve across industries, hype cycles, technologies, while staying grounded in resilience, persuasion, and I guess silliness. Super exciting. If you're thinking about how to lead through change, whether in tech, business, or law, I hope this episode gave you perspective on how to turn disruption into opportunity. Follow CZ and Friends wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our newsletter at gc.ai/newsletter for behind the scenes insights and actionable tips for legal leaders. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.